Hey everyone, welcome to my channel where the strange, the unexplained, and the downright creepy come to life. From real-life encounters with the paranormal to bizarre, true stories that'll keep you up at night, I bring you the eerie tales you won't hear anywhere else. If you're into late-night chills, mysterious happenings, and things that go bump in the night, you're in the right place. Subscribe, buckle up, and let's dive into the unknown. From the instant I arrived, the wind clawed at the window panes like frantic fingertips pleading to get inside. Before I had even crossed the threshold, my chest throbbed with unease, a weightless pressure gnawing at my ribs. My uncle's ancient estate loomed, its slanted roof and stained glass windows silently warning me away. The wind curled mournfully around the gables, moaning into the eaves. I stepped inside and immediately felt the air shift, expectant, heavy, aware. My throat tightened with dryness. I licked my lips as the old floor groaned beneath my feet, matching my dread. The house had become mine under baffling circumstances. My uncle, elusive and odd, had handed over ownership before vanishing, leaving behind cryptic letters urging me to safeguard the legacy. No detail, just keys and a scrawled note. Explore everything before deciding. I'd assumed he meant to preserve family heirlooms. But it wasn't a museum I'd inherited. Not really. The first night, the house welcomed me like clammy hands clasping my skin. I gasped for air in the half-light, scrambling to find a switch. A single bulb finally flickered on, casting frail light across the foyer. Shadows twisted on the walls, pulling back only when I dared look directly at them. Were they tricks of light, or proof the house was alive with something hidden? At first, the disturbances were subtle. Reflections blinked in mirrors I hadn't hung. Sometimes I felt a push in the hallway, like someone brushing past in haste. Night brought noises, footsteps, the dragging of unseen furniture. After each episode, sleep became impossible. My mouth dried to a sting, thoughts racing, heart pounding like it might tear itself free. Daylight helped little. It only highlighted strange marks etched into wallpaper. Faces in old photos shifted expression. Objects appeared on shelves that I didn't unpack. Silver candlesticks, eerie figurines. Determined to uncover the truth, I began to inspect every inch of the house. The structure was a maze of mismatched renovations. Corridors led in loops. Doors opened onto bricked-off halls. In the pantry, I discovered a hidden stairwell behind a false wall. The steps were warped and uneven. I gripped the rail, my hands slick with sweat. Each step cried out with groans that echoed. The air below was thick, foul, musty, and tinged with sour incense. The stairwell led to a dust-caked chamber filled with ornate, leaning mirrors. Their carved frames twisted into forms like vines melding into animal limbs. In the dim glow from a small barred window, I noticed something wrong. Each mirror held my reflection, but none matched. One slouched, another sneered. My breath hitched. I stepped closer. Maybe it was lighting, angles. But as I reached out, one reflection lagged. Only a fraction of a second, but enough to spark sheer panic. I bolted upstairs, slamming the pantry door behind me. But the feeling stayed, eyes watching from every wall. I couldn't shake the idea that mirrors hid behind every corner, tracking me. Action. While rummaging through the attic, I unearthed old journals and letters. My uncle's handwriting, along with notes from decades before. Secrets spilled out in scrawled ink. The house had been used for rituals involving mirrors, capturing reflections to trap slivers of time. They weren't memories, they were remnants, preserved and alive. My uncle had gone further, trying to open pathways between past and present. I found a concealed corridor behind the main hallway, running parallel. There, narrow slits had been cut into the walls, peepholes positioned behind the mirrors in every room. The house had been constructed to observe, a sprawling surveillance network of reflection. Inside that cramped passage, the air thickened. Only my flashlight pierced the dark, casting spindly shadows that danced without my movement. Every inhale was laced with mildew and dust. I approached one aperture and looked through. It showed the living room, same as I'd left it. Then movement. The figure entered. Me. Or something wearing me. It wasn't live, I was watching. But the figure's posture, rigid, strained, and the eyes cold. It turned and stared directly at the peephole I was watching through. I reeled away, heart thundering. Sweat slicked my back as I pressed into the wall. In a journal, I recalled a phrase. The reflection unbound may claim the one who cast it. I could no longer dismiss it as folklore. The mirrors weren't just showing my image. They were rehearsing it, replacing it. Every day, I noticed small changes. My reflection off-kilter, my hands trembling, eyes hollow. Nights became unbearable. Something heavy loomed over my bed, pressing my chest until I gasped awake. Every corner held a threat, every mirror a potential portal. I tried to speak to a relative once, choosing vague language, nothing about mirrors. They grew concerned, suggested I leave. But leaving felt like abandoning the last piece of reality I still controlled. I had to know more. In another hushed conversation, they let slip that my uncle had been researching time within reflections. That nailed it. He had been tampering with forces that refused to stay still. One night, as I prepared to sleep, a soft scraping sound drifted through the walls. Aftermath. I froze. The scraping came again, slow, deliberate. I traced the sound to a section of wall in the upstairs hallway. Plaster flaked as I pressed against it. Something shifted inside. Not rats. Not pipes. Movement. With dread coiling inside me, I pried the wall open, revealing another corridor, tighter than the rest. At the far end stood a mirror, alone, bathed in a faint glow. As I approached, the reflection didn't mimic me. It moved a second too soon. It smiled. I staggered back. The mirror's surface rippled. That version of me, gaunt, wide-eyed, reached out, palm to glass. And the surface gave way. I ran, locked the door behind me, then another. But doors felt meaningless now. I couldn't stop watching myself, afraid my reflection might blink before I did. Later, I noticed bruises I couldn't explain, faint scars forming overnight. When I dared look in the bathroom mirror, the man staring back wasn't quite me anymore. He was adjusting, becoming. I reread the journals obsessively. Each time, the warnings felt sharper. There was a ritual my uncle never completed. A way, perhaps, to bind the reflections or sever them completely. But it required acknowledgement, a direct confrontation. The fear of that confrontation choked me. What if I succeeded in severing the reflections, only to lose everything else? What if the me that remained wasn't whole anymore? Now, I sleep with every mirror covered. But sometimes I hear soft tapping beneath the sheets. And when I pass by reflective surfaces, windows, glass picture frames, even the darkened TV, I catch glimpses of something waiting, smiling. This house no longer feels like mine. It's a stage, and I am both actor and audience. Some part of me, maybe the truest part, remains trapped behind glass, watching with increasing eagerness. And it's only a matter of time before it steps through. A slow, repetitive sound broke the silence. Tap, pause, tap, pause, like a clock echoing through a tunnel. I followed the noise upstairs, heart pounding in my throat, each step heavier than the last. The hallway seemed longer, the air thicker. That's when I saw it. A narrow doorway I'd never noticed before, barely wider than my shoulders, hidden behind the bathroom mirror. I stepped through, flashlight trembling in my hand. The space was cramped, the walls close. Shadows danced and shifted. As I raised the light, it landed on something huddled in the dark. My own face stared back, pale, wild-eyed, a distorted version of myself crouching and trembling. Its hand pressed against the inside of the mirror as if trying to get out. I stumbled backward as the mirror hissed and vibrated, a deep vibration that rattled my bones. Light fractured around me. I ran. Back in my room, I slammed the door shut, jammed a chair under the handle, and stood there, gasping. Something tapped softly from the other side, testing the knob. All day, mirrors acted strangely, reflections that moved too slow, images that didn't quite match. My reflection blinked a moment too late. Sometimes it didn't blink at all. Then came the sickness. Waves of nausea, disorientation. My limbs didn't feel like mine. Footsteps sounded half a second after I took them. I caught myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the expression looking back. I smiled when I didn't. I had to end it. That night, I went into the basement. The chamber of mirrors pulsed with heat. My skin prickled as I stepped in. I turned my flashlight on and approached the largest mirror. At first, it showed only me. Then, behind my reflection, something moved. The image warped. My reflection smiled. A crooked, knowing smile, and lifted a hand. I didn't. My stomach dropped. I reached out. The surface of the glass was ice cold. A pull started, subtle at first, like a tide dragging me forward. The figure behind the glass grew darker, more defined. It looked like me, but hollow, soulless, and it wanted out. I fought it. I gritted my teeth and forced memories into my mind. My parents, my childhood room, the scent of coffee in the morning. I repeated my name over and over until the glass trembled and the pull began to loosen. The reflection screamed silently, mouth wide but no sound. Then it faded. I collapsed to the floor, soaked in sweat, lungs on fire. The mirrors went quiet. I stood and backed away. The basement didn't feel as heavy anymore. Still, I wasn't taking chances. I covered every mirror in the house. Black cloth, duct tape. I locked doors, turned off lights, moved through the house like a ghost. Before I left, I paused by the front door and listened. From somewhere deep inside, I thought I heard a breath. I left that night, drove away and never looked back. But I felt it, even miles down the road. Eyes watching me from behind, something clinging just out of sight. It stayed with me. At home, reflections acted strange again. Just a flicker here, a whisper there. But enough. Enough to know it wasn't over. Sometimes I think I never really came back. That I'm still down there in that basement, trapped in the glass, watching someone else wear my face, waiting for the moment I slip, and the mirror opens again. The second morning, I jolted awake, trembling from a dream that vanished instantly, leaving behind only a sharp residue of dread. A strange hush cloaked everything. The lake was unnaturally still, no ripples, no signs of movement. My throat burned with dryness, parched despite gulping down an entire glass of water. Outside, I circled the cabin, scanning for animals that might explain the noises from the night before. But the soil was untouched, the branches unbroken. Even the air felt hollow, stripped of birdsong or insects, like the entire forest was holding its breath. By late afternoon, the first undeniable fracture in reality revealed itself. The wind shifted, swirling around the cabin with eerie consistency, rustling pine needles in rhythmic, pulsing patterns. It mimicked a slow, steady heartbeat. My own chest echoed it, thudding harder as I stood on the porch, gripping the railing and fighting to stay calm. But the gusts intensified. Between the trees, I spotted a humanoid figure, jerky, unstable, as though caught in a glitched video. When I shone my flashlight, the shape vanished, replaced with empty branches. Yet I knew it remained, watching just out of sight. That night, the scratching returned. It slid along the walls, more aggressive, more deliberate. Each rasp sent chills through me, a crawling sensation over my skin. I struggled to breathe, forcing air down a tightening throat. Desperate to distract myself, I flipped through an old magazine. But something was wrong. The words repeated or bled into each other, spilling across pages that no longer had boundaries. My head ached. The beams above groaned. Windows shuddered. I knew something was outside, pushing closer. I slipped into uneasy sleep near dawn. When I woke, nearly all daylight had vanished. The clock insisted it was 9 a.m., but the sky was already tinted orange, slipping into dusk. My phone had no service. Disoriented, I tried to calculate where the hours had gone, but my limbs felt leaden, aching like I'd run for miles in my dreams. I staggered outside again. That's when I saw them. My own footprints from the previous day, still crisp in the dirt. Nothing had changed. It was as if time itself refused to move forward. Every nap, every blink, left me unsure of what I'd missed. Hours or weeks, couldn't tell. The cabin fell into a looping rhythm. Wind chimes clicked in exact sequences. Floorboards creaked in predictable orders, regardless of where I stepped. My reflection lagged, blinking out of sync or not at all. A cold unease settled over me. My heart pounded so hard I tasted metal. I began to suspect the cabin didn't exist within normal time. It was suspended, trapped in the moments before an unseen disaster. And the loop tightened with every cycle. The patterns shortened. I found myself acting without conscious thought. Rising, pacing, stopping in the same spots. Yet the air thickened. The light darkened. The same scratching returned, louder now. Sometimes claws, sometimes frantic fingers. Then they began to appear. Not fully, but enough. In reflections, I'd catch slivers. Long limbs, skewed proportions. Lurking behind me. Angles bent wrong in the corners of my vision, like the laws of physics themselves were warping. The lake surface twisted, forming fleeting forms before flattening into stillness again. Something was testing the membrane. I clung to the windowsill, palms slick with sweat, breath shaking, spine locked in terror. The urge to flee fought with an irrational certainty that running wouldn't help. One day, I found a journal hidden beneath the bed. Its pages were brittle, ink fading, but the writer mentioned time folds, cycles, and anchor. The cabin, it claimed, attracted entities by repeating itself. The final entries described a breakdown, realities overlapping, something crossing in. The only way to stop it, they said, was confrontation. But it didn't say how. Reality decayed by the hour. Walls throbbed like living things. The floors vibrated beneath my feet, as if something massive pulsed beneath the foundation. Outside, the wind became a howl, erratic and fierce. Pines whipped in perfect sync, like puppets dancing to invisible strings. Panic bloomed in my chest, each breath shallow, the air failing to fill my lungs. I knew I couldn't passively endure anymore. Something had to be done. Either I'd confront it or it would consume me. In a final act of resolve, I whispered my plan aloud. It felt alien to hear my own voice in the stillness. I would record everything. Set up a camera on the living room table, capture the loops, the distortions. Maybe then I'd find a pattern. When the next cycle hit, I knew it instantly. A jarring lurch of the senses, a repeat of the same day. I checked the footage. My jaw clenched. There I was, pacing, reading, sleeping. Images I didn't remember. Glitches in time. The loops were real. Worse, there were others in the footage. Blurred figures in the corners. Tall, thin, with arms that reached unnaturally far. Their shapes sharpened each loop, closing in. My pulse roared in my ears. They hovered just behind me, fingertips stretching as if desperate to touch. The repetition shrank. Hours collapsed into minutes. I was a puppet trapped in a broken clock. I'd wake, move, sit, freeze over and over, bound to the same cursed stage. With each restart, my vision blurred. Dreams leaked into waking life. The walls warped. Furniture shifted subtly. The windows stretched and pulsed. My reflection fractured into dozens of versions, each wearing an alien expression. Their eyes stared, unblinking, filled with dread I couldn't place. I'd hear whispering, snatches of an unspoken tongue, or worse, echoes of my own voice, reversed and twisted, ridiculing my desperation. The air dried out until every breath rasped like paper through my throat. I began to fear a final trap, that one morning I'd awaken locked inside a frozen second, immobile, as these beings pressed in. That's when I understood. I was the anchor. The journal warned of it. The cabin called to people like me to tether two realms. My continued presence was unraveling the barrier, accelerating the collapse. It wanted a bridge, conduit, me. The horror in that truth churned my gut. With each loop, I weakened the boundary. Even resisting it was part of the script. I became aware of a terrifying inevitability. My limbs acted on their own. I spoke aloud without meaning to. The loop was directing me like a play I couldn't rewrite. Then I saw it, the world flickering like static, trees glitching in and out of alignment. The sky dulled to gray, sliced with broken signals. I wasn't alone anymore, and I was running out of time. The cabin convulsed again, the walls shuddering with a sickening rhythm that echoed through my bones. Each flicker of light revealed flashes of impossible landscapes. Icy wastelands stretching into voids, barren deserts beneath purple skies, oceans of black water where stars drowned in silence. They came in stutters, like broken film frames. Glimpses of other worlds bleeding through the cracks in this one. My head throbbed from the sensory assault, and a nauseating pull in my gut told me reality itself was unraveling. The air grew denser, vibrating with a low hum that had graduated to a roar, like 1,000 insect wings beating just out of sync. I could barely breathe. My skin prickled. My sweat turned cold as frost. The pressure pushed inward, like gravity had reversed and now wanted to fold me inside out. I staggered across the cabin, grabbing at furniture to steady myself. The journal still lay open on the table, its final pages smeared with desperate ink. Face the loop, break it, or be devoured. My eyes caught on those words. They seemed to pulse on the page, as if breathing. My thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. I didn't know what the loop was, but I felt it tightening, pulling me into some eternal rewind, some endless knot in time. I remembered the voice on the phone, the one that sounded like mine but wasn't mine, warning me I had to end it. The claw marks on the walls, the figure that watched from the window but vanished before I could confront it. All of it converging, all of it leading here. The hum deepened again, vibrating the floorboards beneath me, rattling the windows until they almost burst. I pressed my palms flat against the wall. It was hot to the touch now, as if something burned just beyond the wood. I felt it again, the heartbeat. Not mine, not human. A thudding rhythm, slow and primal, pulsing through the structure of the house. I closed my eyes. The world spun behind my lids. I could almost see through them, beyond them, into that yawning elsewhere the cabin had opened. Shapes moved in that space. Towering shadows, faceless watchers, things that skittered sideways through dimensions. They scraped at the cabin's edges, probing for weakness, whispering in tones that weren't meant for ears. I slammed my fist into the wall. Once, twice, again. I screamed. Not words, not at first, just sound, raw and guttural. Then words came, torn from a throat gone hoarse with fear. I won't be your anchor, I yelled. I'm not your door. I'm not your prey. I'm not staying. The walls vibrated harder, the entire room pulsing like a dying heart. I shouted louder, drowning out the inhuman drone. You don't own me. The journal lifted off the table and exploded into ash. A wind howled inside the sealed cabin, circling me, shredding loose pages and scattering furniture. I stood in the eye of the storm, arms out, screaming until my voice cracked. Then, everything stopped. A perfect, unnatural silence descended, vacuum-tight and absolute. I wasn't standing anymore. I wasn't anywhere. I floated in a black so pure it crushed thought. There were no walls, no floor, no sky, no breath, just the weightless terror of unbeing. Time fractured. Maybe hours passed. Maybe a second. Couldn't tell. I existed without reference. And then, like a switch had flipped, reality snapped back. I hit the cabin floor with a jolt, gasping. The impact knocked the wind out of me. My ribs ached. My ears rang. But the hum was gone. The tremors had stopped. I lay there for a moment, waiting for another quake, another flicker, another glimpse of hell, but nothing came. The only sound was the sharp rasp of my breath. Slowly, I sat up. The furniture was overturned. The walls scorched slightly where my hands had been. Ash still floated in the air. But the sun was rising. Pale light leaked through the windows, and with it came color, form, normalcy. I scrambled to my feet, ran to my phone. Signal bars blinked into place. My heart thudded in disbelief. The digital clock, long frozen, now ticked forward with obedient seconds. I hit the cabin floor with a jolt, gasping. The impact knocked the wind out of me. My ribs ached. My ears rang. But the hum was gone. The tremors had stopped. I lay there for a moment, waiting for another quake, another flicker, another glimpse of hell, but nothing came. The only sound was the sharp rasp of my breath. Slowly, I sat up. The furniture was overturned. The walls scorched slightly where my hands had been. Ash still floated in the air. But the sun was rising. Pale light leaked through the windows, and with it came color, form, normalcy. I scrambled to my feet, ran to my phone. Signal bars blinked into place. My heart thudded in disbelief. The digital clock, long frozen, now ticked forward with obedient seconds. I couldn't stop shaking. My muscles twitched with residual adrenaline. My hands trembling so badly I struggled to zip my bag. Every movement felt like I was underwater, as if the cabin still clung to me, reluctant to let go. I rushed to pack, shoving in clothes, charger, journal fragments, anything I could find. A corner of my mind whispered, "Leave it all. Just run." But another part, more rational, warned, "If this ever happens again, you'll need proof." I crammed everything into the boot of the car, every moment terrified that the house might call me back, might hum again, might open. But it didn't. The trees stood still outside. The birds were silent, but not in a hostile way. More like the world was holding its breath after a storm. I looked back at the cabin one last time. It looked ordinary. Wooden walls, a small chimney, slightly crooked porch. Could have been any old vacation rental. No one would believe what had happened here. Not unless they saw the ash. Not unless they heard the hum. I got in the car, started the engine. The radio flickered back to life, a pop song playing too cheerfully for the moment. I drove fast, tires crunching gravel, eyes fixed forward. But I kept checking the rearview mirror. The cabin stayed there, getting smaller with each turn of the road. Still, quiet, like a trap that had momentarily closed and would reopen again when ready. My shoulders remained tight, my breath shallow. Even as the sun climbed higher and the woods gave way to paved roads and phone lines, I couldn't shake the feeling that some piece of me had been taken. Or worse, that something else had been given in its place. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror, expecting to see a double, a glitch, a hint of those warped dimensions in my eyes. But there was only me. Still, something felt off. I've been home for weeks now. I've returned to work. I see friends, eat, I sleep, but I wake up sometimes with blood on my sheets and no explanation. My clocks stop at 3:13 a.m., no matter how many times I replace the batteries. Sometimes my phone rings, and when I answer, no one speaks. But I hear my voice, repeating things I haven't said yet. The dreams come too. Fractured visions of the cabin, of clawed hands scraping behind walls, of my own face staring back at me from within the mirror, mouthing words I can't hear. I try to write it all down, but the words never come out right. My laptop deletes things I know I typed. My journals go missing. One morning, I found that same page from the cabin's journal in my kitchen drawer. Intact, unsynced. Face the loop, break it, or be devoured. I burned it, watched it turn to ash. That night, I found it again tucked under my pillow. I haven't told anyone. How could I? What would I even say? That time bent around me like a pretzel? That I saw universes stacked like cards behind the drywall? That something tried to wear me like a glove? I don't know if I broke the loop. I don't know if it even can be broken. Maybe I just paused it. Maybe it's resetting. Waiting. Watching. Some nights, the air hums just faintly in the corners of my flat, and I feel the gravity shift again, as if the floor wants to open. My ears pop. My clocks tick wrong. I see shadows that don't align with objects. And always the wind chimes. They were in the cabin. I never saw them directly, but I heard them always just before the world turned. They had a melody, pattern. Now, sometimes, when everything is quiet, I hear them again outside my window. And when I do, I sit perfectly still and tell myself I'm here, that this is real, that I'm not caught in some broken fragment of time, doomed to replay the worst moment of my life forever. But I don't believe myself, because deep down, I know the truth. The loop isn't over. It's just asleep. And when it wakes again, I don't know if I'll survive it twice. I'd snap awake in the dead of night, drenched in cold sweat, my lungs aching as though I'd been underwater for hours. During the day, I'd drift into fugue-like states, some whisper inside me murmuring a date, a time, always the same. And with it came dread, metallic and heavy on my tongue. A part of me wanted to obey. I grew paranoid. My pulse would spike whenever my phone rang, afraid I'd hear that guttural language again, like from the old man. I'd glance over my shoulder on every walk, breath short and shallow, like danger lurked just out of sight. My reflection in mirrors seemed wrong. Eyes wide and rimmed with dark circles, a version of myself I barely recognized. I felt like I was becoming someone else. The writings I'd scribbled in my notes began appearing in books on forgotten cults, ancient knowledge. I wasn't imagining it. I found a dusty library book detailing the inscriptions I had written down, descriptions of travelers, conductors guiding cosmic forces. Nonsense, yes, but somehow I understood it. It gnawed at my sanity with a sickening clarity. My dreams morphed into nightmares, or were they visions? Standing on that cursed road again, but now the sky above was etched with the same symbols that had appeared on my skin. I never dared turn around to face whatever I felt behind me. My heart would race, and I'd wake up gasping, just before I could see it. Then the date arrived, the one I couldn't stop writing over and over. I felt its pull, something deeper and darker. The bruises on my arms had spread, forming a sprawling cosmic map. They were alive, a connection too strong to ignore. Despite the terror clawing at my throat, I knew I had to follow it. So I drove. The car felt like a coffin as I gripped the wheel, sweat beading on my brow. The road was empty. Not a single car, not a single animal, not even a breeze. Silence so thick it felt like the world was holding its breath. When I reached that stretch of highway, the sky was crystal clear, stars sharp as shards in the darkness. The air was still, and the marks on my skin itched with unnatural urgency. I passed the broken streetlight, and my stomach knotted. My breathing quickened, heart hammering. I parked, turned off the engine, and was swallowed by a silence so complete it was deafening. It was as if the world itself had gone still, and then there it was, presence. I couldn't see anyone, but I felt it. The old man, or whatever he represented, was near. This time, though, I wasn't lost. I was beckoned. Trembling, I stepped out of the car, my breath forming clouds in the freezing night air. The crunch of gravel under my shoes was deafening in the silence. I scanned the horizon. The landscape seemed wrong, like everything was out of joint. The stars above pulsed in unnatural rhythms, as if they were alive. My skin crawled with an awareness I couldn't explain. I looked down at my arm, and to my shock, I saw them glowing faintly, patterns forming before my eyes, like ancient star maps. The dizziness nearly knocked me out. I nearly collapsed. Then I felt it. Something behind me. It was too much to grasp, too vast to name. A cosmic presence, ancient and incomprehensible, towered over me. My throat went dry, my body shaking with terror. My breathing turned ragged, each inhale like shards of ice. I realized, with a cold stab of horror, that I was the traveler, the conductor, chosen to guide that ancient force. My body was the gateway, but in that moment of primal fear, I refused. I fought it, pushing back with everything I had. I screamed, an inhuman, broken cry that echoed through the stillness. My muscles burned with effort, every fiber resisting. For a moment, the presence receded, just a bit, like a wave pulling back before the bigger surge. My vision blurred, and my ears rang with a high-pitched tone. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air, my face slick with sweat. I expected to see the old man, his withered face inches from mine. But there was no one. Just me, trembling, alone, under the cold, indifferent stars. The next thing I knew, I woke in my bed, the afternoon sun streaming through the window. My body ached as if I'd run a marathon. The marks on my arms had faded, still visible but far less pronounced. It was as though something had been siphoned from me that night. But I remained alive, mostly. I wish I could say I found answers, or a way to remove these marks that bind me to that cosmic entity. But the truth is, I live in a state of restless vigilance. I keep the lights on, double-lock my doors at night, and leave the radio on static just to break the silence. Though the date has passed, I sense it's not truly over. In my dreams, I'm back on that cursed highway again, hearing that low hum, feeling my heart pound like it's trying to escape my chest. My skin crawls, and the marks on my body glow with an eerie light. I survived that night, but I don't know how long I can keep the pull at bay. I still feel the presence lurking, just out of sight. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in my living room, the lights flicker, and the hairs on the back of my neck rise. My breath catches in my chest, and I feel it again, the old man's voice in my mind, chanting that incomprehensible language. He tells me I'm chosen. He tells me there's no escape from the fate I'm bound to. I fight it, clinging to the rhythms of daily life, going to work, paying bills, pretending that everything is normal. But the mania still creeps around the edges. The marks on my skin pulse when I stare too long. And that suffocating sense of being watched never fully goes away. I know I'm not free. Whatever that entity was, it's rooted itself in me. And someday it may call again. Until then, I live in uneasy defiance, heart racing whenever I think of that road. The old man's voice, his mutterings, those lost 3 days. They're a constant reminder that some horrors slip through the cracks of our world. The tension of not knowing when or if I'll be called again is its own kind of nightmare. So I lock my doors, check my windows, and wait. I could sense something was wrong the instant the rusted signpost came into view. The air along the winding road felt dense and humid, clinging to my skin like a cold sweat. Everything around me was far too still. No chirping birds, no distant hum of passing cars, just oppressive silence and the faint smell of damp earth. It was as if the world was holding its breath. And there, standing in the middle of that unsettling hush, was the sign for a town I'd never heard of. Large letters and chipped paint welcoming us to a place that seemed to materialize from the gloom itself. My friend Marcus and I had been traveling together for a few days, taking a road trip on a whim. We were looking for a reprieve from our routine, chasing new experiences across back roads and small towns. Neither of us expected to stumble upon a village that shouldn't be on any map. Yet, there it was, perched at the end of a long empty street, a cluster of old buildings that seemed to flicker in and out of existence as if caught between this world and another. I parked on a narrow shoulder, feeling uneasy the moment I shut off the engine. The silence roared in my ears. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding, and my breath felt jagged in my throat. I noticed Marcus shift in his seat, and he muttered something about the atmosphere being weird. Though he kept his voice low, I caught the tremor in his words. It wasn't exactly fear, more like a deep-rooted anxiety. The kind that creeps in when all your instincts are telling you to turn back. But we decided to investigate. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and adrenaline, we walked toward the town. Each step on the cracked asphalt sounded painfully loud, and I kept expecting someone to appear in a window or on a porch. No one did, at least not immediately. The buildings looked like they were lifted from some lost era. Faded signs, broken shutters, a single lantern swaying in the breeze. I felt as though unseen eyes were following us, making every hair on my neck stand at attention. My stomach twisted. The taste of metal filled my mouth, and I realized I was grinding my teeth. At the heart of this settlement stood a small square with a dry fountain in its center. Crumbling stone benches surrounded the fountain, and the entire place smelled of wet concrete and rotting timber. Marcus and I exchanged uneasy glances. We sensed that we weren't supposed to be there, yet it felt like the town had lured us, beckoning with some intangible promise of dark wonders. He quietly suggested that the place might be abandoned, but I noticed faint hints of habitation. A flicker of movement in a window at the far end of the street, a door left slightly ajar as if someone had been expecting us. It became clear that people lived here. But why were they hiding, and why did the whole place make my skin crawl like I was trespassing on forbidden ground? We ventured deeper, keeping our voices down. My lungs felt tight, and I had to remind myself to breathe properly. The gloom grew thicker as the sky overhead turned a murky gray. I looked back at our car parked near the entrance and realized I could barely see it anymore through an inexplicable haze. It dawned on me that if I tried to run back, I might lose my way. The streets stretched and twisted as though the town itself were shifting behind our backs. I began to wonder if we had gotten turned around or if we were imagining details we'd just seen. Marcus murmured that he thought he recognized a particular store facade from a different direction, as if we'd circled around without noticing. Yet we both swore we'd walked a straight line. My heart raced faster, and cold perspiration gathered on my forehead. A bizarre notion wormed its way into my mind. This town was toying with us, bending and unfolding at will, trapping us like insects in a maze. When we finally encountered one of the residents, it happened so suddenly that my pulse nearly exploded in my chest. A tall figure in a long coat emerged from a side alley. The way he moved set off alarms in my head. His steps were almost mechanical, like he was stepping through the motions of a half-forgotten dance. He looked at us with eyes that didn't seem to focus. I was too startled to speak, and Marcus just stood there, swallowing hard. The man motioned for us to follow him, a gesture that felt rehearsed, as though he'd done it countless times for countless visitors. Without words, he led us toward a small building that might have once been a general store. Inside, the air was stale, and a single weak light bulb swayed from the ceiling. I felt every nerve in my body on edge, hyper-aware of each flicker of the bulb. The man mumbled something about the city appearing and disappearing, though his voice sounded like it came from a great distance. He said it existed everywhere and nowhere, skipping across time and space. He spoke about how the townspeople were stuck in an endless cycle with only fragments of memory about their condition. It was only afterward, when I tried to recall our talk, that I realized I couldn't remember his exact words. They felt more like vague impressions seared into my mind. The man drifted away, and we were left alone in the store. A layer of dust coated the counters and shelves, except for a single pathway that seemed recently swept. I felt a growing sense of claustrophobia, as if the walls were inching closer. My throat went dry, and a wave of dizziness came over me. I struggled to focus on the shapes of items strewn around. A rusted cash register, cans with labels too faded to read, a battered clock stuck at 3:17. The room smelled of mold and something acrid that made my eyes water. Marcus gestured for us to leave, his breath coming out in short gasps. I agreed, moving as quietly as I could. Outside, the sky had darkened even more. I had no sense of time anymore. Everything seemed to float in a haze. We passed a row of old houses, each more dilapidated than the last. But occasionally, I glimpsed something inside a window, a reflection of my own fears staring back at me. Once, I thought I saw my childhood home, but it dissolved into the weather-beaten boards as soon as I blinked. My heart pounded against my rib cage. I felt I was losing my grip on reality. Marcus began to fret about not remembering the way we came. He wondered if we should just pick a direction and run. But I was terrified of the thought that this place might rearrange itself again, leading us into an endless labyrinth. I felt a painful tightness in my chest, accompanied by shallow gulps of air that didn't seem to fill my lungs. My palms were clammy, and I had to wipe them on my jeans just to maintain a semblance of composure. An older resident appeared around the corner. They looked at us with a distant confusion, as if we were phantoms who had interrupted their routine. In halting words, they conveyed that the city moved as it pleased, drawing in outsiders whose fears and memories fueled the illusions around us. They warned us that the city thrived on that fear, shaping itself to match the terrors we carried. I felt my blood run cold. It was as if the walls and streets were living pages of my darkest thoughts, adapting and morphing with every anxious beat of my heart. I began to notice that the windows reflected not just the two of us, but scenes from my past. A hospital corridor where I once stood trembling under fluorescent lights. An abandoned playground where I'd felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. Each vision twisted my stomach into knots, reminding me of vulnerabilities I tried to bury long ago. My breathing grew ragged, and I felt small tremors running through my arms and legs. The sense of being watched became unbearable. Every sound, a creaking plank, a distant footstep, sent jolts of electricity through my veins. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting some shape to materialize at my back. Marcus tried to keep us focused on finding an exit, using fragments of logic to guide us away from the center of this haunted maze. He kept reminding me that we needed to stay calm, that panic would only feed the illusions. But I could see the tension etched into his forehead and the way he clenched his fists. We turned corner after corner, sometimes stumbling back into the same courtyard with that cracked fountain, as if the city itself were mocking our attempt to leave. Eventually, we slipped into a narrow passage between two decrepit buildings. The alley was cramped, lined with soggy boxes and broken crates. The smell of rotting cardboard churned my stomach, and I had to gulp back nausea. Something skittered in the darkness. A rat, perhaps, or something far less ordinary. My heart was thundering so hard it felt like it might burst through my ribs as Marcus and I squeezed through a gap between two leaning buildings, the space barely wide enough for our shoulders. The air back there was heavier, thicker, almost soupy, and every step forward felt like wading through invisible sludge. We didn't speak. Our breath came in sharp gasps, the silence between us broken only by the gravel crunching underfoot and the low, unnatural hum that filled the town like a pulse. Not a sound made by any machine I recognized, no whirring, no rhythmic whine, just a shifting frequency, rising and falling like breath, like thought, like something alive and aware of us. Ahead, the street opened into a wider space, a sort of crossroads where houses leaned in at odd angles, their windows dark and warped like melted glass. Some of them cracked as if something had tried to claw its way out, or in. The rooftops sagged under their own weight, shingles missing in jagged patches, giving the illusion that the buildings were bowing toward us in some grotesque welcome. Marcus suddenly stopped and pointed toward the faint glow on the horizon. It wasn't sunlight, it was too steady, too static, but it was the only thing that looked remotely real. We both broke into a run, driven by the irrational certainty that if we could just reach that light, we'd be free. As we moved, the town morphed around us. Not violently, but subtly, like a dream shifting behind closed eyes. Shadows lengthened against logic, twisting like fingers across walls. Every now and then, I'd catch sight of someone standing in a window or peering around a corner. Silent, unmoving, half-seen. And every time I tried to focus, they'd vanish like smudges on a lens. My throat was raw, my legs ached, but we kept going, drawn toward that one constant, until we reached it. But it wasn't salvation. It was a single, flickering street lamp in the middle of a cul-de-sac. At first I thought it was just a cruel illusion. Then I saw the number bolted to the metal post, 23, and I stopped breathing. It was the same number as the lamp outside Marcus's childhood flat. When I looked at him, his face had gone gray. "This is mine," he whispered. "I used to stare at this from my bedroom window at night. I thought it was safe." The ground beneath us rippled, just slightly, and the hum rose in pitch, vibrating in my jaw, my bones. The light flared, then sputtered. Shadows on the walls of nearby buildings danced and twisted unnaturally, some slithering upwards against gravity. My head pounded so hard I felt like I might vomit. Then a voice, not spoken aloud but inside me, ancient and thick and echoing, told me that the town was drawing us in, folding itself around us, trying to confuse what was memory and what was real. It promised an exit, if only we could stop listening to the town's lies. I don't know if Marcus heard it too, but when I grabbed his wrist, he didn't pull away. "We have to focus," I told him. "We have to hold on to what's real. The air, the gravel, the pain in our feet, each other. That's what's real." We pressed on, resisting the pull of the houses around us, their shapes now becoming too familiar, replicas of places I had known long ago. We passed my grandfather's house, long since demolished, yet standing here in perfect condition. A childhood playground, rusted and silent, with a swing swaying though the air was still. Every memory rendered in impossible detail, bait for the mind. Then we saw it. A crooked lane that hadn't been there before, cutting diagonally through the grid, leading toward an expanse of rolling hills and a strip of clear sky, painfully blue. I couldn't trust it, not entirely, but I also couldn't ignore the hope that bloomed in my chest like fire. We ran, full tilt, even as the town fought us. The light around us flickered, the street cracked beneath our feet. A shrill, ear-splitting note tore through the air like a scream, and the buildings bent inward, as if the entire place were breathing us in. I thought we wouldn't make it. I thought the town would close in around us and fold us into its paper-thin reality forever. But then we passed through. Just like that. One step we were inside the town, the next we were out, stumbling into early morning light on an empty stretch of road, our lungs heaving, our faces slick with sweat. Behind us, only mist. The town was gone, or at least it was hiding again. Maybe it never fully existed. Maybe it just found ways to be remembered. The car was where we'd left it, somehow untouched, the seats still warm as if it had been waiting. We didn't speak on the drive back. Every roadside sign made my stomach lurch, half expecting that same cracked blue one to appear again. Welcome to Asheville. Population. Still. The further we got, the more the hum faded, but it never vanished completely. Not really. Even now, late at night, I sometimes hear it when everything else is silent. A low, rising tone behind the walls or under my bed. I sleep with the light on. I check every mirror. I no longer trust familiar places, because I don't think Asheville was a dream or a hallucination. I think it was waiting, and I think it still is. Watching, listening, choosing its next visitor. Because the truth is, once you've seen the town, once it's seen you, it doesn't matter where you go. It finds a way to follow. I hadn't moved. One of the deer twisted its neck toward me. Deliberate, calculating. Not the twitchy glance of a startled animal, but something aware. My breath caught, heart pounding so violently I thought it might explode. Its eyes locked with mine and everything slowed, time thinning. It didn't just see me, it recognized me, saw into me. I froze, chest tight, skin prickling. Then just as suddenly, it turned. All three resumed their off-kilter march into the dark, shadows swallowing them. I was left behind, drenched in sweat, trembling. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. Fatigue, imagination. Over the phone, I told a colleague I'd seen unusual deer behavior, keeping things vague. Maybe if I used plain words, the memory would lose its power. But the memory clung. Those limbs that didn't move quite right, that deer's knowing stare. My heart raced every time I saw it again in my mind's eye. A week later, I was tasked with surveying aquatic life at a nearby lake. A narrow trail led to it, flanked by reeds rustling in the wind. The canopy above filtered afternoon light into jagged shadows that danced at my feet. Each shift of a branch sent a chill down my back. I was hypersensitive. Twigs snapping, wings flapping, boots sinking into damp earth. When I reached the shore, the lake was still. So still it reflected the skeletal branches above like a mirror. As I crouched to gather a water sample, a ripple formed near the center. Just one. My stomach turned. The air was dead calm. No fish, no wind. Yet the ripple moved, slow and wide, like something ancient exhaling beneath the surface. I leaned closer, heart hammering, hands shaking until I spilled water from the jar. I squinted into the murk and saw something darker than the lake itself. It wasn't an animal, it was a presence. My skin prickled. My breath quickened. Then the ripple stilled, as though it had never been. I told myself it was a fish, or a log, but dread bloomed in me. Something timeless had touched me, left a mark on my consciousness. 2 weeks later, the real terror arrived. I was finishing notes on nocturnal insects. The moon lit everything in a sterile silver glow. Each crunch of dry leaves beneath my boots, every rustle, hoot, whisper of wind sent my nerves twitching. That's when I saw it, a shape at the edge of the clearing. At first, I thought it was a tree stump, but it moved, tall, straight, cloaked in a long coat that dissolved into the night, with a top hat perched high. I froze. My chest tightened. My legs wobbled. My pulse pounded against my skull like a war drum. I blinked, tried to breathe. Maybe it was stress, a hallucination, but it didn't fade. It watched me, I could feel it, its hunger. The air thickened. I was prey. My body shook. Sweat cold down my spine. I tried to speak. No sound. My throat sandpaper. Then it stepped forward. Smooth, silent, too fluid. I stumbled back, catching my foot on a gnarled root. I expected it to attack. Or vanish. But it stayed, letting me study it. I could make out its long, bony fingers. The glint of eyes that stared back with unnatural calm. I don't remember how I got back to my cabin. Just flashes. My feet pounding the dirt, branches slapping my arms, my panicked breath. I slammed the door shut behind me, flicked on every light, and collapsed onto my cot. I didn't scream, couldn't. I just sat there, rocking, panic rippling through me in waves. From that night on, my world fractured. I started seeing things. Ripples in the air, shapes flickering just out of view, shadows falling in strange, deliberate ways. Bright bursts of color shimmered in corners like sentient light. My mind wasn't breaking, it was rewiring. I was seeing layers most never touch. Colleagues noticed. They asked if I was okay. I said I was overworked. But dread rooted deep inside me, like I was bracing for something to hit that never came. Sleep became rare. The slightest sound jolted me awake, heart racing, drenched in sweat. I felt watched inside my own walls. My reflection lagged in the mirror or twisted subtly, like the glass showed a place that wasn't quite mine. Eventually, I began to recognize a pattern, some system below normal comprehension. I suspected these things fed on emotion. In some clearings, I'd feel sharp anxiety like a psychic scar. I started to think I'd become a host. Since those encounters, deer, lake, man, I changed. Heightened senses, constant fear, crawling skin. This wasn't anxiety. Something had attached itself to me, using me to bleed into our world. I wanted to claw off my skin. I could feel it inside me. My breathing was shallow. My heart never stilled. And sometimes, I heard it, a clicking sound like a language forming under the surface of my mind. When I slept, the dreams came. The tall figure hunting me through silver-lit forests. The deer staring from every direction. Always silent. Always watching. During the day, I worked, sampling water, tracking plant growth, placing trail cams, but none of it felt clean. I didn't dare watch the footage alone. I'd glimpse at it quickly, nauseated, sure I'd see that figure peering back. My colleagues whispered, asked careful questions. I offered half-truths, stress, nightmares, deadlines. But inside, I was convinced. If I spoke honestly, they'd lock me away. Or worse, they'd leave me alone when I most needed to know I wasn't. Over time, I pieced together a dark ecology. These beings, entities, worked together. A shared network feeding on fear, slipping between realities. Our world was just one of their hunting grounds. And me? I'd been picked. Again and again. My repeated exposures cracked me open. I was a beacon, a resource, a liability, a tool to widen their reach. My last night in the reserve, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed the essentials, left everything else. Couldn't sleep, couldn't stay. The air was hot and heavy, like breathing steam made of fear. Each step felt like dragging a mountain behind me. Twigs snapped underfoot like rifle shots. My nerves burned. I expected to see the figure, or the deer, or that ripple, but they never showed. Instead, I felt them everywhere, all around. A chorus of unseen eyes following me, silent, watching, tracking every trembling step I took. With sweat and adrenaline coursing through my veins, my lungs burned from shallow, rapid breaths. The shadows around me shifted, sometimes coalescing into spindly shapes that scattered when I turned my head. I reached my vehicle at the edge of the reserve, fumbling with the keys, my hands trembling so violently I nearly dropped them. When the engine finally roared to life, relief surged through me, so overwhelming it brought tears to my eyes. Yet as I pulled away, the darkness of the forest seemed to press in tighter, as if some unseen force were making one last effort to hold on to me. Driving away, I saw no figures in my rearview mirror. No grotesque deer bounded across the road. No cosmic ripple shattered the stillness of a lake. But the crushing weight on my chest didn't lift. I still feel it, a lingering presence inside me. It's as though a tunnel now connects me to that other place, an ever-present corridor through which I can sense them prowling. Even within the safety of my own home, I can't escape the occasional glimmer of something unnatural at the edge of my vision. The tall man in the top hat visits me in dreams. His face, forever hidden by darkness, radiates an ageless hunger. I suspect these entities cross dimensions with ease now, and perhaps I'm the reason for that ease. At times, I feel their muted celebration. In the tingling along my spine, the tightening of my scalp, the creeping paranoia that never fades. I'm surviving, if you can call it that, but I'm irrevocably changed. I may have left that place, but it hasn't left me. Even now, my heart pounds at the memory of those deer and their contorted movements, the lake's silent depth and the inhuman posture of the man in the top hat. I've come to a terrible conclusion. I'm a conduit, possibly the first of many. There's an entire unseen ecosystem behind our reality, and each day I feel it drawing closer. The boundary is thinner now. My mind won't stop replaying the signs I ignored. I still have nightmares, though nightmares doesn't capture their intensity. They feel like another life, one where I'm always hunted, lost in a maze of towering trees and endless lakes. I wake with a scream in my throat, soaked in sweat, stumbling to the mirror, half expecting to see a spidery silhouette behind me, or a reflection staring back with eyes that aren't mine. This isn't over. My understanding of reality has been shattered. I can run, but I can't unsee what I've seen. It's all around us now. The only difference is I can notice the flickers, the shifts in atmosphere. They feed on my anxiety, sense my weakness. But I stay alert, determined to live with this knowledge, no matter how heavy it feels. Still, the dread remains. It lingers in my chest, haunts my sleep, and waits at the fringes of my waking life. And I fear, truly, that this is only the beginning. Story 13. The Hallway. I still remember the way my skin prickled that first night I felt something watching me, just out of sight. A chill struck in the heart of summer. No breeze, no open windows, and yet every hair on my neck stood upright. I'd just gotten home from work, my head throbbing, and the hallway to my bedroom seemed darker than usual. The silence felt suffocating. Something in the shadows was waiting for me. Even before I flicked the light switch, my heart was already hammering. The emptiness of the corridor pressed against my senses, whispering that I wasn't alone. My name is Victor. I share this tiny, aging apartment with another guy, Adam. We're both just trying to make it in a city that drains more than it gives. The place isn't much, scuffed walls, peeling paint, creaky floorboards, but it had always felt safe until recently. Then everything started to shift. At first, I blamed the stress. I'd see the outline of a figure just beyond the corner of my eye. Tall, too thin, shoulders unnaturally sharp. But every time I turned to look, it was gone. My breath would tighten, my spine quiver. Still, I convinced myself it was all in my head. Adam never said anything, so it couldn't be real, right? Turns out, Adam had been seeing it too. I found out over breakfast, when I casually mentioned a strange dream. A hallway that never ended, dim lights flickering, a tall shape lurking at the far end. I said I was sure it had been our hallway, just distorted. Adam went pale. He muttered he'd had the same dream, then said nothing more, but his white-knuckled grip on his coffee mug said enough. Over the next few days, everything intensified. The apartment filled with strange noises, barely audible scraping in the walls, clicking sounds late at night. The hallway lights began to flicker when I walked beneath them. Sometimes, when I flipped the switch, they would blaze blindingly bright before dimming back down. Each time I entered that space, something primal inside me screamed I was trespassing. Adam and I started exchanging notes, nothing formal, just muttered admissions when we crossed paths. He confessed that sometimes, late at night, he felt something behind him. He'd spin around in panic, only to find nothing. Other times, he glimpsed a silhouette in his periphery, vanishing when he turned to look. Our shared experiences terrified me. We were both seeing the same thing. I tried to reason it away, suggestion, shared paranoia. But the sensation of being watched felt too tangible, too visceral. Then the dreams changed. I've always been curious about lucid dreaming, though I'd rarely achieved it. But a week after we discovered our parallel nightmares, I found myself fully conscious in that same endless corridor. I knew I was asleep, yet everything around me was agonizingly real. The cold air, the musty paint, the hum of the lights. Each footstep echoed as I walked. The hardwood floor creaked beneath me. At the end of the hallway stood the figure, tall, impossibly dark, with stretched limbs and a faceless head. My heart slammed in my chest. Sweat stung my eyes. Still, I stepped closer. Just as I neared it, a sound like dead leaves rustling filled the air. The figure's head jerked sideways, and I realized it wasn't just seeing me. It knew me. The lights surged violently. The hallway twisted, distorted. My stomach heaved. Then, mercifully, I woke. My pulse pounded, my skin clammy, the sheets soaked. The next morning, Adam looked just as shaken. He'd had the same dream, lucid, vivid. His version ended the same way, corridor buckling under impossible forces. Somehow, we'd shared that dreamscape. Our fleeting sightings of each other in the nightmare confirmed it. And from that point on, the lines between dreams and waking life began to blur. Something in the apartment began to blur. The walls around us, familiar and worn, started shifting in ways we couldn't fully explain. Subtle distortions surfaced. Paint cracks deepened into unnerving crevices that looked as if they might pierce through to some other place. Light bulbs flickered with such persistence it felt like the apartment was blinking at us. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the corners of rooms, the geometry itself warping as if space had loosened its grip. A suffocating dread crept in each time I stepped into the hallway. Breathing there became a chore, the air heavy and tinged with a faint metallic tang. Felt wrong, claustrophobic, unnatural. That tall figure, the one from my dreams, started appearing more frequently. Not just when I slept, but in those hazy thresholds between waking and unconsciousness. I'd bolt upright at 3 a.m., positive I'd seen someone watching me from the doorway. At other times, half asleep on the couch, I'd feel that presence looming behind me. A sudden awareness, pressure. I'd leap up, gasping, heart jackhammering in my chest. The apartment no longer offered comfort. It became a watchtower, a place where rest turned into relentless alertness. Adam tried to make sense of it, scouring obscure forums and late-night threads about shadow people, interdimensional beings, and parasitic entities feeding off liminal consciousness. He described theories that chilled me. Creatures caught between planes of existence, slipping through the veil when our awareness faltered. I resisted belief, but logic was no longer helpful. We were unraveling, losing touch with the scaffolding of reality. One especially grim night, I resolved to confront it, the figure, in a lucid dream. I prepped for days, practicing finger counts, anchoring focus to steady points, training my awareness until I could slip into dream clarity. And I did. When sleep took me, I entered the corridor again. That hallway, stretched, flickering, haunted. Cold sweat trickled down my spine, and my heart pounded so viciously it made me dizzy. But I kept walking, footsteps echoing toward the silhouette. Adam stood behind it, or maybe beside it. Or maybe he was only a flicker in the shifting lights. Darkness pressed in like an ocean, and the air around the figure pulsed with violent static, tearing at the edges of my thoughts. I asked it what it wanted, but my voice sounded alien, fractured, weak. Its head twitched. Then it glided forward, fast, blurring. And without speaking, it told me. It was trapped. It was seeking a way through. We were the bridge. Each semi-lucid moment fed its grip. Every encounter reshaped our waking world. The walls of the corridor trembled, slick and rippling like disturbed water. Then it tore open. The space around us peeled back, revealing a swirling void, shrieking with howling winds and clawing shadows. My mind stretched to its limit, and still the figure pulsed with triumph. I woke up choking, drenched in sweat, gasping under the piercing light bleeding through the blinds. My room looked warped, walls vibrating faintly, air thick and hard to breathe. I staggered out and found Adam on the couch, wide-eyed, pale. His chest heaved. He'd seen it too, felt it. He told me it was infiltrating the apartment, replacing it bit by bit with its own dimension. Time fractured. I'd leave my room thinking it was dawn and find the kitchen clock flashing well past noon. The hallway lights stuttered for hours, casting erratic shadows across windows where city lights should have been. My heart never rested. It thudded endlessly, like it was trying to escape me. Sleep brought no peace, only deeper communion with the thing. The apartment had a heartbeat now. Each groan in the floorboards felt like breath. Each light flicker, a blink. I couldn't think. Couldn't read. Words slid off the page. My mind repeated that corridor every time I closed my eyes. Adam changed too. He grew quiet, unsteady. He'd pace by the windows, searching for fissures in our reality. Then, one evening, he said he'd found something, an idea from a fringe forum. A dream ritual. A way to trap an intruder by consciously entering a shared dream and sealing the breach. It sounded insane, but desperation had long since replaced disbelief. That night, we stayed awake until the edges of exhaustion blurred. We planned to fall asleep at the same time to anchor each other. My hands trembled. My throat felt dry. I listened to every creak in the dark. Then I drifted off. And there it was again, the corridor. Lights flickering overhead, casting jagged shadows on warped walls. Adam stood beside me, or some dream version of him, and we locked eyes. Terrified but resolute. The figure waited ahead, enormous, limbs unfurling in a gesture that could have meant welcome or doom. The air snapped with tension. I wanted to flee. My body screamed to run. But I stayed. My jaw ached from clenching my teeth. The walls vibrated, peeling back to that black void. It lunged, and I felt it inside my thoughts. Cold, hollow, alien. My limbs trembled, but I held on. I visualized the real world. Peeling paint, worn carpet, detergent-scented air. I forced that memory to burn through the darkness. And then, cracks of light tore through the corridor. The space screamed. The figure shrieked in that dry, leaf-rustling rasp. My chest burned. My heart clawed at my ribs like it wanted out. Everything collapsed inward, gravity ripping at us. I yanked myself out. I woke up screaming, soaked in fear. My body thrummed with adrenaline. The apartment was still. The pressure in the hallway had eased, just slightly. Adam was upright, breathing hard, pale but conscious. He'd broken free too. Over the following days, the flickering eased. The hallway still hummed with unease, but that silhouette no longer waited in the shadows. The smell shifted back to its usual staleness. Somehow, we'd reclaimed a sliver of normalcy. But I couldn't let go. Every flicker of light made my heart skip. Every soft shadow made me recoil. I'd wake at night, sure it hovered at the door. I'd stare at empty space and feel something looking back. We stopped talking about it. We went through our routines with fragile calm, both understanding that whatever happened had changed us. Even now, I feel it. The memory of the void curls beneath my ribs. My chest tightens. My skin prickles. I know deep down we might not have defeated anything, we might have only delayed it. The veil is thin. So perilously thin. I sometimes catch the rustle of dead leaves just as I'm falling asleep. And I freeze, pulse spiking. I tell myself it's in my head. But part of me never really believes that. I live in a careful balance, teetering between denial and dread, hoping I never see that shape in my doorway again. But when I lie there, eyes closed, almost asleep, I always feel it, watching, waiting, just on the other side of the dream.